Well, to talk about the by-elections, we're now joined by Carlene Variyan. She is Associate Vice President at Summa Strategies. Gerry Keller is Vice President at Strategy Corps in Ottawa. And Kim Wright is Principal at Wright Strategies. Hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Great to be with you.
Now, listen, these four seats considered safe seats by their respective parties. And I definitely want to talk about both Jonathan Pedneau and Maxime Bernier in a bit. But let's talk about by-elections writ large. How important are these by-elections for the parties to at least test out their campaign machinery? Carlene, I'll get you to start us out since we know the Prime Minister will be asking Canadians for a fourth mandate.
Well, we certainly got confirmation of that at the Liberal Party's biennial convention a couple of weekends ago, where the Prime Minister gave a speech that said in no uncertain terms, I'm staying, I'm going to take on Pierre Poilievre. By-elections are a useful tool for parties in both situations where the outcome is relatively known, as well as by-elections that are tight races. And we do see those from time to time. As you mentioned, Michael, the four coming up are not necessarily that. I think they will be most valuable for the Conservative Party in terms of field operations, communications, their GOTV strategy, because they're the party that have had the most recent significant turnover of senior staff and infrastructure. I think you can expect to see the Liberals and the NDP use their standard playbook that they've been applying in the last number of elections. And so it will be most interesting to watch what the Conservatives do. We got a little bit of a taste of that in the Mississauga by-election just before Christmas. And in that one, we didn't see the new leader, Pierre Poilievre, have much of a role at all. So I think what we'll be watching for in these four by-elections is whether he makes stops in those ridings or not.
Okay, then, Gerry, let me bring you in because, you know, as Carlene says, the last by-election was the riding of Mississauga Lakeshore. That was last December. Conservatives came a distant second. So how important are these by-elections for Pierre Poilievre?
Well, it's a good question because the four by-elections in and of themselves, to Carlene's point, they really aren't in question. They're all four very safe Liberal seats, or sorry, very safe seats, one Liberal, and two Liberal, actually two Conservative, and so for the two safe Conservative seats, you know, they already have strong infrastructure in the ground on place there, good local teams in place. But you know, to Carlene's point as well, there's been a lot of turnover at national office, and really that Lakeshore by-election really wasn't a great test because Pierre Poilievre had only been leader for a short period of time. The infrastructure, you know, they hadn't really started to fix that infrastructure. Now they've had a new executive director in place, some new people on the party side, and it's a good testing ground to test some messaging and to test some party machinery. But make no mistake, all of these seats that the by-election would call them are safe seats. So great for fine-tuning, but probably not more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kim, what would you say about these by-elections and how they fare or how important they are for the parties?
Well, I would disagree with my colleagues here to say that this is not going to be a sleepy campaign. Maxime Bernier, running in Portage-Lisgar, has already laid down the gauntlet, calling Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives fake Conservatives, and that you can, elect somebody where it doesn't really matter because they're not going to be part of the government. And so he's actually trying to rile up his PPC base, which can be when weaponized, I suppose, for lack of a better word, quite interesting. In the Conservative side, the candidate there, his name is Brendan, he actually has used a bit of a U.S. slang. His social media post was "Let's go, Brendan," and so, which is a bit of a, I don't know how politely I can say "F you, Biden" is the way that they kind of frame it in the U.S. So is this a whisper campaign? Is this dog whistle politics as usual? So that's going to be fascinating. Who's going to out conservative and out real quote unquote conservative? Then you also had Pierre Poilievre going into Oxford last week and doing his now infamously mocked mud on his boots in Pearson Airport video, where he said phrases like, "I was out with the common people at their festivals." which doesn't really exactly scream man of the people out meeting folks. So I think that there was a reason that Pierre Poilievre stayed out of Mississauga Lakeshore last time, and that's frankly once they started seeing the numbers of how Pierre Poilievre engaged or didn't with voters in a meaningful way, it impacted his polling. What we'll always see on by-elections, and Elizabeth May is always the standard, can you start to gain traction? As Elizabeth May did coming in second in the 2006 London by-election that some viewers might remember. That was her coming out party, for lack of a better word. So this is an opportunity to test messaging in multiple provinces, machinery in multiple provinces, and work the kinks out. But I suspect all of these campaigns are looking to get a lot more headlines.
Okay, listen, I got to barrel through a few questions here because I do want to touch on a few points. But Gerry, pick up on that because you know when Kim is right. Maxime Bernier has called Poilievre a fake conservative. What kind of impact will the People's Party leader actually have on Poilievre's right flank?
Well, look, Max Bernier is desperate for attention, desperate for votes. He's quickly becoming the John C. Turmel of Canadian politics. That's a guy who's running like 58 straight elections in Canada and lost them all. And I suspect Max is going to do the same in Portage-Lisgar. I mean, for goodness sakes, he couldn't even pronounce the name of the riding correctly when he was doing his campaign launch. But there's a reason why he chose that riding to run in and not any of the other ridings to run in. And that's because in the general election in 2021, the People's Party struck 20% in that riding, not with Max Bernier, but with another local candidate. And I think that was a bit of a different moment in time. Clearly, there was a lot of frustration in that sort of rural Manitoba, strongly socially conservative riding of people that were fed up around COVID mandates. There was a lot of issues raised with the shutting down of church services in churches. And in the recent Conservative nomination, you can't ignore the fact that Brandon Leslie, the Conservative candidate, defeated the sitting finance minister of the government of Manitoba, a Conservative, Cameron Friesen. Can't ignore that. And there's a reason why that happened, because he directly tied Mr. Friesen's record as part of the PC government of Manitoba with COVID lockdowns, the lockdown of churches, the lockdown of small businesses, to say, that's your record. I'm not that kind of conservative. And so it's hard for Maxime Bernier to go in and say, well, you know, fake conservative when you have a guy who has good traction on the ground, has clearly shown that he's not afraid of taking on a big name. And so I think Max is going to be a lot of bluster in this campaign, but not much more than that. I'd be surprised if he got double digits in this campaign.
Okay, Carlene, do you think Maxime Bernier stands a chance in the riding?
Not at all. To be blunt, for all the reasons Gerry stated, he's going to have a real challenge. But you add to that, this is a guy from, to be really blunt, this is a guy from Quebec with a relatively thick French accent that's coming into a rural prairie riding and expecting to connect with people. I'm just not sure that that's a match that's going to have a lot of success. Yes, opposition to pandemic measures is a real thing in this riding, but that has not been an issue that has as much relevance or interest by voters the way that it did in 2021. No, I don't see that being a real force in this campaign at all. It will provide a little bit of distraction for the Conservative Party of Canada's campaign, and that they'll have to be looking over their shoulder and paying attention to what he's doing. But do I think that they really have to worry about their hold on this riding? Absolutely not.
Okay. That leaves Jonathan Pedneau, and I'm really losing time here quickly, so I apologize. But Kim, I'll leave this one to you because, as I said, Pedneau is running in the riding once held by Marc Garneau. Any thoughts on that strategy or what the Greens have at stake with this by-election?
Well, they have all sorts of things at stake, and including, who will be on that leaders debate stage come the general election. Will Elizabeth May do it or someone else? Will she let go of those reins long enough? So it'll be interesting to see. I'm actually really excited. The New Democrats actually have a contested nomination. They're nominating their candidate tomorrow evening, and can't wait to see that. We want to see on the campaign trail how these various parties are resonating on the ground. How is their local machinery, and how can they pull through in Quebec versus Manitoba, because you have to win a nationwide mandate. So that's kinds of things I'll be looking for at this point.
Okay, well, we have about a month to the actual by-election date itself, but for now, Carlene, Gerry, Kim, thank you for that. Really appreciate the insight tonight.
Thank you.
Great to be with you.